take the red pill.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars.
The disastrous rise of misplaced power exists.
All we have built, all we have worked for, would be destroyed.
There is nothing the political establishment will not do.
And this nation will not be fully free until all its citizens are free.
Our arms must be mighty, ready for instant action,
These criminals cannot be rewarded.
so that no potential aggressor may be tempted to risk his own destruction.
There is a point beyond which they must not advance.
They're coming after you, and I'm just standing in their way. Here I am.
You and I have a rendezvous with destiny.
The cost of freedom is always high.
Those who had the most to lose did the least to prevent its happening.
Our movement is about replacing a failed and corrupt political establishment.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
This is a crusade! This is a holy war against the deep state!
We never wanted to be right, but yet things are all adding up to the firestorm. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. My name is Josh. Welcome to the Red Pill Project's Daily Dose, live with you Monday through Thursday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. My hair is going all over the place. This is where we bring you the unfolding global conspiracy. That song right there was from Disturbed, their rendition of The Sound of Silence. And those links are being posted right now for anybody who is interested in going and catching that song. Let me get it out on Rumble right here, as well as Pilled, D-Live, everybody else. It is over by you guys. So you guys should now be able to see that. Is my mic a little too close? Okay. All right. Woo! Let's rock and roll. All right. Welcome to the Daily Dose. Earth season 2024. This season is called Scorched Earth, because they will scorch this earth before they ever give up power and control. And we're seeing the indications of that over and over and over again. I got to do something about this. Hold on one second. If you guys didn't know, I have long hair now. And so the hair kind of you guys got to get pulled back inside the hat. So don't mind me pulling the hair back. There it is. All right. Feel much better now. I'm so used to short hair, but the long hair, hey, whatever. By the way, as a reminder for anybody tonight, we have a live Q&A on socialredpill.com. Live Q&A with myself on socialredpill.com. I know I've been saying we're going to add other people in there. That is coming. We got Tammy Cupworth Garcia that's going to be coming in and doing a live Q&A. And I'm going to see if Dr. Lee Merritt wants to come in and do a live Q&A, as well as James Grunwig and many more to come. But tonight is my night. We're going to be doing a live Q&A. We kind of hang out. We shoot the shit. And I'm going to probably have a beer or two because it was a busy day. But a good day because, look, my lighting's fixed. Hey, my lighting's fixed. Oh my God, my light is fixed. So got my lighting fixed in my garage. Got a whole bunch of other stuff done. But enough about me. Let's talk about what's going on. So socialredpill.com, if you're interested in that, socialredpill.com. You can sign up for there. You can help support us with a $5 subscription a month. And you get into those live Q&As every Thursday night, as well as Friday night when we do have conversations on the fringe. So Scorched Earth. This is something I've been saying for a very long time. They will scorch this earth before they ever give up power. What does this really mean? Let's think about it for a second here. They can never, ever let Donald Trump be president again. And yep, everybody on Facebook, give me a second. I'm coming for you. I saw it. Facebook just canceled their stream. And I'm going to hit that like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and turn that back on. Sorry about that. So sometimes we do get those content licensing blocks, and Facebook just did that to us, but we'll be back on streaming here in a second on Facebook. I just got to get it back up. Let me see. Okay, it says streaming. I'm going to do a Control F5. Sorry, guys, just some technicals we're working with. I was curious if that one was going to do that or not. So Facebook, we are back up. Sorry about that. Hopefully that won't happen again. I see the numbers kind of on the live stream go from like 150 down to 60. And I'm like, oh. So back up on Facebook right now. All right. So let's think about this. Donald Trump obviously is not going to lose. We got the debate next week with Joe Biden. Joe Biden won't take a drug test. They're asking for special rules that Joe Biden gets to sit down in between the parts of the debate, that mics are turned off in between each session. This is going to be very interesting to see this, because we've seen the mental decline of Joe Biden over the last few years. Now, I do have a few theories about this. I'm going to talk about it just a little bit. So we'll get into that. And it's just an extension of my theory I was talking about last night, where it's the other type of great replacement theory. They're going to replace Joe Biden. And I think that he's going to pass away in office just because we're in that historical context of a time. They want to save Hunter. They want to remove all the investigations into the deep state, into Joe Biden, his corruption. And the best way to do that is something I've said for this whole time, is to let Joe Biden die of old age. And I think that that's what's going to happen August, September, October timeframe. I'm predicting it now. I don't like making predictions, but we're going to see what happens. But they cannot let Donald Trump assume power again. They just can't. He is going to absolutely destroy this election. Even if they tried cheating, it's just not going to work this time. I said that they're most likely going to go for the House, because the House is the one aspect that they can control on January 6th to throw the decision back to the states, and in the interim, utilize that to install their own puppet if they wanted to. On the other hand of this, we have World War III that potentially could break out, and this is getting closer and closer than ever. For many, many years, I've talked about the proxy wars that would be waged from the Eastern Europe to the Middle East to Southeast Asia. We know that Southeast Asia, the Asian Peninsula, is going to ramp up now with North Korea being funded by Russia. And by the way, that means China too, just because that's proxy between Russia and China, the close relationships. Now we're seeing many, many other BRICS nations join up. So we see the ramping up of World War III. Then we had the global economic collapse. We talked about this a little bit last night. So there's many different things that they can utilize against us, many tools in their arsenal, much ammunition that they have to fire against you, me, and the American people and all of Western society. The reason they'll do that is because they need a crisis. They need some type of major national disaster or crisis to install the certain protocols, emergency powers, to take over the government, to take over the states, to take over the people, to restrict them so that Donald Trump cannot take power. What are those things going to be? I don't know, but we know for certain that they will not ever give up power again to Donald Trump. They just can't. They know that they will hang from nooses. So the question is with Scorched Earth, what happens next? Because we're seeing a lot of preparatory moves being made right here. Israel moving resources from Gaza to prepare for war in the north, according to a new report. And this was just announced by Israel. American officials have quoted saying Israel aerial defenses may not withstand Hezbollah's precision weapon attacks. They are concerned Israel set on a military solution to return residents and security to the border region. Just yesterday, we had Iran talking about how if you hit us, we're going to hit you. And that is extension and proxy of Iranian militants, including the Houthis, including Hezbollah. And we know that the Middle East is pretty pissed of what is actually going on in Gaza, with Israel targeting a lot of the civilian population. So now Israel is moving up their defenses up to the north in a sense of a war with Lebanon and a war with Yemen and all these other very Iranian dominant countries, in the sense of a proxy war with Iran. The U.S. has vowed support for Israel in this. This is not a good thing, because now we're going to have naval assets going into the Middle East all over again, as well as troops and money and supplies. And this is just slowly bankrupting the United States of America. Joe Biden, over the last few weeks, has vowed to support Ukraine militarily and economically for the next 10 years. That is just atrocious if you're an American taxpayer, because you've seen the $100 billion that's already gone to Ukraine just in the last year. And all of our weapons and defense systems are being sent over there, which is depleting our arsenal here in the United States of America. But then you heard Jens Stoltenberg, the chief of NATO, say just the other day, yesterday and the day before, that NATO pilots will be piloting F-16s, that NATO troops will be on the ground in Ukraine, that there is a war coming in Ukraine against Russia, and NATO is going to fight it. So when we start looking at what's unfolding right now, this is, they will never give up power. This is the scorched earth. NATO expansion caused the war in Ukraine. This is David Sachs. To make a peace deal, you would take NATO expansion off the table. Trump said, for 20 years, I've heard that Ukraine joining NATO is the real problem for Russia. That's why this war started. Biden said Ukraine will go into NATO, which was wrong. During my presidency, Russia never considered attacking Ukraine. As soon as I left, they started forming the lines. Biden's rhetoric provoked Russia. If you're running Russia, you wouldn't be happy about NATO on your border. It's always been a no-no. Now they're talking about Ukraine entering NATO again. It's provocative and escalates the conflict. Good luck with that. Let's listen to Donald Trump and David Sachs talking about this, because this is exactly what I'm saying. This is intentional moves. This isn't defensive counter moves. This isn't Europe being afraid of Russia. This is promulgating World War III.
To make a peace deal there, would you be willing to take NATO expansion off the table if that's what it took to get the Russians and the Ukrainians to make a deal? Would you be willing to do that?
So for 20 years, I heard that NATO, if Ukraine goes into NATO, it's a real problem for Russia. I've heard that for a long time. And I think that's really why this war started. I'm not sure that this war would have started. Biden was saying all of the wrong things. And one of the wrong things, he was saying, no, Ukraine will go into NATO. That's one of the many things he said. When I listened to him speak, I said, this guy is going to start a war. Because as you know, for 4 years, there was never even talk of Russia going into Ukraine. That would have never happened. Russia was not going to attack Ukraine. As soon as I got out, they started to form along the lines. And I thought that Putin maybe, look, he's a good negotiator. I thought he was going to be doing that for negotiation purposes. Then all of a sudden they attacked. And I said, what's going on here? But if you look at the rhetoric from Biden, he was saying the opposite of what, in my opinion, you had to say. But the things he was saying, and he's still saying it, he's saying things that are so crazy.
Inflammatory. Yeah.
I 100% agree. And, you know, it turns out that the month before the Russians invaded, Blinken told Lavrov that the administration was not only going to bring Ukraine into NATO, but that they thought it was okay for the United States to put nuclear weapons in Ukraine. So no wonder the Russians hit the roof. I mean, you talk about provocation.
Well, let's say you were running Russia, you wouldn't be too happy. And that's always been off the table. You know, it's a border. If they thought that that was going to remain sort of a territory where you don't have NATO, but they don't want to have soldiers right on their border. They don't want to have it. It's always been understood, and that's even before Putin. It's always been understood that that was a no-no. And now you can go against their wishes, and it doesn't mean they're right when they say that. But that was very provocative. And now it's even more provocative. And they're talking about, I hear routinely, they're now talking about Ukraine entering NATO. And now I hear France wants to go in and fight. Well, I wish them a lot of luck. I think good luck.
And you got to remember, Donald Trump isn't talking to two Joe Schmoes there. He's talking to incredibly wealthy and rich people. And this is one interesting turn. This goes to the multi-headed hydra that I've been talking about. We're going to mention this here in a little while. We got Tammy Cuthbert Garcia coming on in a little bit. She's going to talk to us about various different things. I'm going to talk to her about what's going on in the world, what she thinks is really happening, and how this is going to unfold in the September timeframe. But let's go on with the news here. So we have Trump there talking about how this is a major mistake by the West, by the United States. The rhetoric of Joe Biden promulgated the proxy war in Russia. And I look at that as almost as it was planned. It was planned by the Biden administration, but it was also counter-planned by Russia and most likely Donald Trump. This is my opinion, and I'm sticking to it because this is the only thing that really makes sense in the sense of the rise up of the BRICS nations against the Western authority. So Trump, tariffs give us power to prevent economic decline. Larry Summers warned your proposed tax cuts and tariffs would cause stagflation. Can you respond? Trump said, I respect Larry Summers, but I believe in tariffs for economic and political gains. Tariffs give us power over misbehaving countries. We're losing influence as countries move away from the dollar. Losing the dollar's dominance is like losing a war. Tariffs provide the leverage to stop this. If a country taxes us, we should tax them equally. We need a reciprocal trade tax or a fair trade tax. And he's spot on. And this is the way that we actually resolve the economic issues in the United States of America, because it evens the playing field in the sense of the cheap labor and the cheap goods overseas, and it eliminates the income tax here in the United States of America, which puts more money in Americans' pockets, which eases the flow of inflation that is hurting us every single day. So very interesting there that Trump is going to utilize tariffs instead of economic sanctions. And you remember what happened to China when they did that? When he did that in China, to China during his presidency, it was a massive uproar by China, and it hurt China economically massively, worse so than sanctions ever would, because there's ways around sanctions, especially with the UN and various different programs that the UN operates to basically drive around those sanctions. So let's get into other parts of the news. Biden administration accused of actively endangering our national security with new missile policy that prioritizes Ukraine above all else. So JD Vance said, at this point, we're actively endangering our national security by focusing on Ukraine to the exclusion of other priorities. He's absolutely right here. But Christopher Miller said, scoop, the U.S. is set to halt all open border orders for Patriot air defense systems and interceptor missiles until Ukraine has enough to defend itself from Russia's air attacks. 3 people with knowledge of the decision said the move would be announced today. Now, why is this important? Because the U.S. is not arming Ukraine. The U.S., as well as NATO, are moving NATO and U.S. assets into Ukraine, Poland, and other Russian border states in preparation for war. You got to think about this. We're not funding Ukraine or giving Ukraine all of this weaponry. We're moving it into Ukraine under proxy situation so that when American troops and NATO troops arrive there, the 300,000 that Jens Stoltenberg was talking about, it's already there and readily available. We already know that it's the U.S. that has been coordinating and conducting the airstrikes against the Russian Navy and against other various different targets in Russia. That NATO has been actively involved in this with troops on the ground in Ukraine. This is already World War III or war with Russia in Eastern Europe. The world just hasn't been announced to it yet. So we have to understand that these moves by the Biden administration, by the United States, by putting these types of air defense missile systems in Ukraine as well as Poland and so forth, are not to help Ukraine, but instead to prep for World War III that is about to break out any freaking minute now. Biden's border invasion. Hordes of military-aged men march like soldiers into California at midnight invasion. During the overnight hours, there was encountered a mass illegal crossing in the Jacumba, California after midnight, made up of about 150 to 200 adults and families from around the world. Despite the MX military posted up nearby, cartel smugglers still call the shots out there. And there's a few different articles talking about how cartels are making a mass profit by getting various different foreign nationals to come and pay for safe transit into the United States. This is crazy, but we also know that the UN and various different NGOs are also paying for this by the utilization of taxpayer dollars. So we're being invaded at our southern border. The cartels are helping, which are nothing more than an extension arm of the intelligence agencies. We have proxy wars ramping up in the Middle East, Asian Peninsula, and Eastern Europe. Eastern Europe is ready to rock and roll in the sense of World War III with Russia. Israel and Iran are drawing in conflict probably within the next month or 2 months, especially when Israel begins targeting Hezbollah units within Lebanon. That is going to be a massive indication that that war is about to break out. And then North Korea is going to be funded with missile systems from Russia, which most likely will be used to provocate war with Japan or South Korea. South Korea being a massive U.S. ally and massive tech hub in the sense of microchip production, as well as Taiwan. And that is the proxy that China wants so they can prep going into Taiwan in the early fall, which is what I've said for the last year. So we see these 3 proxies come about Why are they important? Because that is the ammunition that is needed to create a global crisis to allow the government to seize power at any point in time that they wish against the American people, the suspension of habeas corpus, the suspension of your constitutional rights, the implementation of curfew, the mandatory draft that gets implemented. They just approved that for women as well. Everything is leading up to this because they are all out of options, because the house of cards is falling for these motherfuckers. And that's one thing to understand. Biden's America, Department of Homeland Security intel group led by Brennan and Clapper proposed a plan to have Americans snitch on their neighbors and redefining political dissent as public health so people will snitch. So American First Legal on Thursday released new documents that reveal the Department of Homeland Security was proposing policies to encourage ordinary Americans to snitch on their neighbors. The DHS intel group also included a plan to reclassify political dissent under the guise of public health so that ordinary Americans like mothers and teachers felt comfortable coming forward and snitching on their neighbors. This is exactly what any communist regime pushes on its citizens. Now the Biden regime is pushing this on all Americans. This is the Marxist Revolution that we are facing right now. So, part one, newly obtained documents reveal that the advisory committee that included John Brennan and James Clapper discussed ways for the DHS to increase efforts to collect intelligence on Americans across the country, including attempting to get into local communities in a very non-threatening way. If you see something, say something. You remember that from DHS? By the time Homeland Intelligence Experts Group was announced in September 2023, the group had already been meeting for as long as 4 months. However, during the September meeting, the group held a discussion on collection posture and associated challenges, where a group member, likely someone from the DHS, complained that there was no mandate for state land local partners to collect information, which resulted in limited access in INA. This graphic set the scene. Looking across the drivers, it starts with reporting, no mandate for state and local partners, limited access in INA, intelligence and assessment. Data is the big challenge. Support for this mission set has varied and changed after January 6th. 2009 to 2019, not a lot of departmental support. It does become political. They continue that while support for this mission set has varied, it had changed after January 6th as their mission to combat domestic terrorism gained departmental support and political support. However, DHS has a very limited authority to engage in intelligence collections, constrained by the Constitution and federal law. The group noted that the See Something, Say Something campaign after 9/11 fell short because Americans have an ambivalent feeling of telling on each other. The problem, as one attendee phrased it, how do we get into local communities in a non-threatening way? How do people safely report a concern about their neighbors? This is the creation of the Gestapo, of the rise of the Nazis. The Marxists are coming, people. The Marxists are coming. See, that's the type of world that they want to implement during a crisis. During a crisis, if you're stepping out of line, if you're not doing the restrictions that they put in place, they want other Americans to snitch and tell on you. They have their army of radicals that will gladly do that. We saw that during COVID. We saw that during the restrictions that were put in place. People were calling cops on people for not wearing masks or saying 6 feet away. So they've already established this. They're just trying to establish it through dictate and through policy. But here's the thing, is in a time of national crisis, they will bring about these types of provisions and implement them slowly, state to state to state. And they'll have their radicalized lefty governors do it for them. Keep that in mind as we move forth within the firestorm. Ex-CDC director, we will have a bird flu pandemic, just a matter of time. This is from Dr. Robert Redfield, the former CDC director. He says, I had this on my Twitter. There it is. Okay. So Robert Redford said, former Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Director Robert Redford said he predicts a bird flu pandemic will happen. It's just a matter of time of when that will be. What does that mean? It means that it's happening right now. It's coming. This is another aspect, is when a national crisis is declared, you're going to see the bubbling up of everything else. Global economic collapse, unemployment, a housing crisis, the economic aspect, the supply chain aspect, which is being massively whittled away at in the sense of the culling of chickens, of pigs, of cows. This is how it starts. You get this national crisis that comes about probably through the creation of World War III because of 3 proxy wars. You get people that don't want to be drafted. Next thing you know, you have a bird flu pandemic that's killing all the food, and now it's infecting people. New types of restrictions come in. The WHO finally gets to step in and voluntarily utilize their provisions and restrictions to go in there and say that their treaty works. And all hell begins to break loose. This is where social and cultural destabilization begins to truly break down. That only happens for the people who are unaware, who don't know, who live in fear. Not for us, because we understand what's going on. This is interesting. Juicing. CBS News expects some surprises on Biden's physical performance at next week's debate. Citing sources, CBC News told their audience to expect surprises on Biden's physical performance at next week's presidential debate. President Trump and Joe Biden will face off in the first presidential debate next Thursday. The debate will be hosted by CNN in Atlanta. The microphones will be muted except when it's the candidate's turn to speak. Campaign staff may not interact with the candidates during breaks, and no props are allowed. I'm told that we should expect some surprises as well, because this is such a critical performance for Biden, not only on the content, but on his physical performance. Biden is currently hiding out at Camp David, the presidential retreat, and Catoctin Mountain Park in Maryland until the debate next week. The last time the public saw Joe Biden, he was struggling to get into his presidential SUV. Joe Biden on Tuesday evening struggled to get into his SUV motorcade after an exhausting night of fundraising in McLean, Virginia. The only way for Biden will be able to function at next week's debate is if he is doped up on a cocktail of meds. And I can't wait for Donald Trump to actually call him out on this and to see what happens when that occurs. And we could see maybe a national crisis occur during that time. We could see the fact that Joe Biden melts down, has a stroke, something of that nature on stage. It's a very big possibility. They want to make Joe Biden look like a gap. They want to make Joe Biden look like he does have dementia and that he's dwindling in health. They want to do that because this fall, they're going to remove him. They're going to remove him, and who are they going to put in place? Well, it could be anybody from Michael Michelle Obama to Hillary Clinton, but it'll be a woman, I assure you. Breaking news earlier today, J6 committee was likely established in violation of the law, rendering all depositions and subpoenas issued by the committee an overreach of its lawful authority, making the arrests of Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro to be deemed unconstitutional and constitute a breach of law, according to former Assistant Attorney General Jeff Clark. This is huge. Let's see if that holds truth. But what should be happening is things like that should be put up to the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. Now we're seeing this right here. And you just heard it from me last night. You've heard it from me for months. President Trump should appeal hush money case to Supreme Court by a writ of habeas corpus, a rarely used judicial remedy that can potentially fast track the reversal of Merchant's horrible decision. Been saying it. Now it's coming out in the mainstream and people are talking about it. Now, I said this, Adam Kinzinger said he was talking about Joe Biden's videos. These are blatant lies. If you actually zoom in on his face, he's very mobile. He's not frozen. Guard yourself when you see these videos. Let's take a look at this, because I want everybody to see just how bad it is for Joe Biden right now.
His brain is broken. The difference is he does it more energetically. And, you know, and I think it's completely an unfair comparison, but right now, you know, Joe Biden looks a lot more low energy than Donald Trump, and that's Donald Trump's advantage. But these videos, I mean, they're blatant lies. And it used to be, Jim, back in the day, it would be kind of the dark corners of the internet that would put out these fake videos, and then responsible people like members of Congress and the Senate or the RNC would say, no, we're not going to do that. They're the ones pushing this now.
So he's saying that these videos that Joe Biden is completely fine. Let's watch. Judge for yourself.
Anyway, and I don't want to, well, maybe choose my words. I was just thanking, anyway. But I just, look, I mean, Putin's kleptocracy, yeah. It was in January, after being elected. The late January, early February.
There's 5 freaking minutes of this. Something big is getting ready to happen. And I think they are getting ready to replace Joe Biden. August, September, October timeframe, because that is the critical move that they can do. I mean, and you got to think, how are they able to do this? They have to make it appear as if Joe Biden's running, that he's doing good, that everything's going great for the country. And then you have a top off where everything begins to come home. And now you replace him with a new candidate, but he's got to pass away in office. I'm just telling you, he can't resign because of mental health, because it validates everything that's been said before, that he shouldn't have been in the position in the first place, that the 25th Amendment should have been used. This means that he's got to pass away, but also the passing away of Joe Biden allows for all the lawsuits and the charges and all the investigations to end for him and most likely Hunter. This is why I'm telling you, it's going to probably happen August, September, October timeframe. I didn't know this. I saw this on Alex Jones earlier today. Wall Street to list America's protected public lands, including national parks and wildlife refuges, on the New York Stock Exchange. I'm only going to play a quick minute of this. It's really important to understand this. I did not know this till I saw this today. This is pretty absurd. Check this out.
Wall Street to list America's protected public lands, including national parks and wildlife refuges, on NASDAQ starting November 17th. It's done. It went through. It's not privatization. It's robbery. Unless it's stopped, and let's face it, what are the odds of that happening? United States government is planning to pass a rule November 17, 2024. It's just a rule. See, these agencies are regulatory outside of Congress, to allow Wall Street to assume total control, because Congress already gave them the power regulatory to do this, in the Department of Interior and all the rest of it, to allow Wall Street to assume total control over America's public land, waters, and other natural resources, just like we're a third world country.
Wow. And we're going to be going to water wars here, guys. We're going to be going to water wars here soon, as I've been calling it for a long freaking time. And Tammy, hi Tammy.
Hi, good night, good evening.
I was bringing you in, and I'm like, oh, I should have probably announced it first. But Tammy Cuthbert Garcia here with us today. So I don't know if you saw that clip on Alex Jones, but our government is handing over our national parks to Wall Street.
I just saw that, yeah, and I was writing down some notes. This is what I think, Josh. With a fiduciary responsibility, when something goes public like that, they can then push the burden onto the fact that they have to act responsible in good favor of the stockholders.
Right.
So that would be my first thought when you said that. It's like, okay, once this goes public, then all of a sudden those rules go into place where they have to do what's best for their shareholders, for the stakeholders. And that way they can say, well, we can't allow people to go here without this cost, or we can't, it's about segregating us from nature. I really feel like it is.
It is. It's about the privatization of nature and privatization of our resources. So that is controlled by oligarchs. And they put it on the New York Stock Exchange like, well, now Americans can own it. Dude, we already fucking own it.
Yeah.
We own it through our government. There's no reason to own it through Wall Street. But they say, well, now you can buy a portion of it. And well, no, BlackRock and State Street and all of these other, Citadel will buy it all up, and Vanguard. That's not what we want. That's fascism, if you want to look at it in that perspective. Now you'll see private signs coming up. But it goes to the point of what I've talked about in the sense of the multi-headed hydra, where we have this oligarchy that runs and controls things from a very high level. The American people no longer have the controllability of the United States of America through a constitutional authority, but instead that has shifted to these private organizations and these large financial organizations and foreign organizations that can exploit our politicians, our laws, and circumvent the Constitution to their own benefit of power and control. And that's exactly what this is. It's just another move of exactly that. And what this is going to do is lock up the free water, lock up all the clean natural springs, aquifers, all of this in the United States. We saw last week that Mexico City is coming to a near crisis by the end of the month because they're running out of drinkable water. And they're not running out of it because of supply. They're running out of it because of regulation and policy, of which needs to change to preserve and reserve it. But also, Mexico gets a lot of its fresh water from the Colorado River, which is drying up in certain parts because California, Arizona, Utah all get their fresh water from the Colorado River as well. What people didn't know is that the Walton family, the Walmart family, they have a philanthropy that runs out of Colorado, and they have petitioned the government for many, many years to clean up the Colorado River. And they receive millions upon millions of dollars each year from the federal government, taxpayer dollars, to clean up the Colorado River. But then they have for-profit companies on the other side of the house that go and take that water and ship it out to the UAE, to Dubai, and so forth. So they're selling it on one end.
Yeah. Multifaceted. That's what I find. Usually these agendas hit a number of things. So we're looking at being able to control our access to water. We're looking at pushing people into cities, because once they can say, well, we have to protect these lands because our investors, we have a legal liability to do what's best for our investors, right? That's another way to push people into the 15-minute cities. Just the other day, my son went hiking and was so mad because you got to pay $17 in order to park to go do a 14er. And this, he's 21, so he's done a few fun 14ers, but he's never had to actually pay for it himself, right? I'm like, yes, this is why we do what we do, because we want this stuff to be free to you. He felt so violated, because everyone should have access to nature.
Yeah.
Shouldn't have to pay. I mean, think about how much concerts cost now. You can't take your kids to a ball game without dropping a few $100s. Forget the NFL. The average family can't go to an NFL game. You're talking a couple $1,000s to take 4 or 5 people or more to an NFL game. So they continue to kind of break down the family, break down, activities that you have a God-given right to, in my opinion. You have a God-given right to go climb a mountain if you want to. Nobody can monopolize nature. But that's what they're doing, and it's all in line with their agenda. They have to disconnect us from nature, Josh. Otherwise, we still have that lifeline attached to God, and that's what they're trying to break. I mean, these dang phones have done a great job of that. I talked about that on my show today, how we actually need to retrain our brains in order to be able to concentrate again, because we've fallen into this trap. And kids that are raised on iPads, raised on phones and whatnot, their dopamine, serotonin responses are like this now. And so we actually have to make a conscious effort to retrain our brains for attention. That means implementing strategies like making yourself read, sitting in a bathtub. I mean, that's even gone. Right? We shower real quick. Oh, we're always in a rush. What are we in a rush for?
Not me. I beautify myself. I take Hollywood showers. I take baths. I get the candles out and the incense. I do.
Good. It's the time that your brain needs to process, right? Meditate, pray, have your own critical thinking. I imagine you have to do that, Josh, because of the nature of the work that you do. Like, you're always bringing me new ideas where I reframe stuff. And I think, oh my gosh, I never thought of it that way. And that kind of thinking doesn't happen when you're on this. This is doing your thinking for you, and you're just absorbing it. So that, to me, there's a bigger agenda at play. And it's the severing of us from nature. And that's just another way they're going to do it. They don't have the right to sell our land to anybody.
They don't. They don't. And this is why I urge everybody out there, if you got a few $1,000s, go buy an acre of land. I just go buy an acre of land. I mean, reinvest in America and do that by buying an acre of land. This is something your government's never going to tell you because they don't want you to. Because if 350 million or 380 million acres of U.S. land was owned by Americans, then they lose their power. I was taking notes when you were talking about that, and I apologize for everybody with a key typing because I know they can hear it, but the monopolization of nature, you're spot on correct. State parks being ran and owned by the New York Stock Exchange. I just watched a video of this gentleman on Redacted, and he was talking about the Real ID Act, Real ID 2020, and how this is all implemented. But he's a farmer, and he said that this is being implemented now throughout all cattle, livestock, chickens, everything is being tracked and traced. And he said that, a few years ago, if you took a unregistered cow over the state border, the FDA would hit you for that. And there was no way to track it, but they still knew. And he goes, now they're all tracked. And he goes, they know exactly where all these livestock are at all frickin' times. And he says this is going to come up in the sense that there's new regulations out there for shows. Like if you're a traveling show with the cows or the animals or a rodeo or whatever it might be, that all of them have to be updated and vaccinated, that they cannot compete unless they are.
Yep.
This is the type of regulation that they're going to start with our farm animals, and they're going to move on to people. And what do? They restrict the movement of these animals highly within these farms. They create new laws, policies, and procedures of how you can treat these animals, of the type of cages and pens that they have to be in, the things that they can eat. They vaccinate the shit out of them, and then they track them wherever they go because they're chattel. And this is exactly the same situation that they're creating with you and me.
Yes, I totally agree. And Colorado, we've been pushing back against that, specifically in Weld County. They've been trying to alter our husbandry rules where we're not allowed to handle any animal while they're giving birth. Like they're getting down to the nitty gritty, Josh, where they want to know what animals are birthing, how much you have. This is another reason why I think they're going to use bird flu as a food grab. This is another, facade to say, oh, it's a matter of biosecurity. We need to know exactly what you have on your property. And there's Deborah Birx coming out saying, we got to test every cow in America every week. Oh, and we have to test dairy workers too, and anybody that handles animals. She's now pressing for this testing, this case-demic she wants to create. So that way, if they find any positive, we've been over the PCR test a million times, I'm sure. But Carrie Mullis said it was never used to diagnose. You can find anything if you magnify that test, 40 times, 60 times, like they were doing with COVID. You can find about damn near anything in with a PCR test. They just need a motivation to say, oh yeah, see, it's present. It's present. So she's going back to the old asymmetrical. Asymptomatic.
Oh, asymptomatic. Yeah.
It's been a long day. I already did 2.5 hours of radio. But yeah, asymptomatic, right? You don't know you're sick, Josh. We're smarter. We have the technology. We have these, laboratory science tests that tell us you're sick. You just don't know you're sick. It's the old dog whistle thing that the left comes up with all the time. It drives me insane. Are you sick if you have absolutely no symptoms at all? Just because that stupid PCR can detect that there's fragments, which I mean, we saw that with that African president, right? We've talked about that. The Tasmanian guy who tested the fruit and the goat and all that and got positive tests back. It's just starting that all over again. But this time it's much more concentrated on our food supply. And the reason why is because that's a huge way to control. They want to monopolize and centralize our food supply. So small farms, any kind of makers that make things or provide things in a small way to the marketplace, they want to cut that off. And they're going to scare the bejesus out of people like us. They're going to tell
not people like
everything.
us, regular, ordinary people.
Well, small farmers is what, they're going to scare the small farmers, regular people. They're going to, the people who don't know, I fear that they're going to lose their small farms completely. Because did you know this? I covered it on my show this week, that the government will pay you compensation if you allow them to cull your herd. So if they come in, which you got no control over, they find one positive test, they'll compensate you for your flock or for your cattle or whatever animals they kill. Here's a positive test. Let us cull them all, which is absolutely disgusting the way they do it too. They suffocate birds inside of these chicken houses. So they spray them with foam and they're not able to breathe. And eventually they just all die. That's the way they do it. They also stop ventilation. So it's a horrific sight. I watched video of it. It's absolutely disgusting. And they do that based on a test, not on any symptoms that these birds have, just based on their test. And then they'll compensate you for them. What they will not do is if you wait to see what happens, to see if you get one bird with a symptom or anything like that, they will not compensate you in that case. So once you have a bird that gets sick and you call them and say, okay, I need to take care of this or whatever. No, there's no money for you. Because you know why? If your chicken eats 2 blades of grass, Josh, when it's sick, it will become healthy. The whole reason, Joel Salatin told me that on my show the other day, it's because the way that these chickens are being raised isn't right? These weird things are able to survive and breed and multiply within these chicken houses. But when a free range chicken comes up with any kind of, bacteria or anything, I'm not even talking about the bird flu here. I'm talking about, things that come up in nature for real. If you put them out into pasture and they start free range and start eating as much as 2 blades of grass, everything changes and that chicken gets well.
Huh.
So if they really wanted to save these things, save these birds, save these flocks, they would simply let them go free range. Yeah. And it would take care of it. They don't have any interest in that. This is totally, of course, we all know your audience is brilliant. They all know this is totally about our food supply though. And I think it's going to escalate right before, I think you're right, September. So we're going to see some real turmoil in our food supply.
I think we are. And, it goes back to the idea of like, remember when they were trying to limit rainwater in a lot of states? So some states still have the provisions where you cannot collect rainwater. Yeah. But what happened in the counties and the towns that said, hey, this is stupid and dumb? They implemented it through HOAs or other types of easement actions. Mm-hmm. And this is what they'll do. They'll stop at nothing to control everything. Yes. And we need to push back. We need to stand up. And I was listening to this, the same farmer that I was talking about earlier. He said one thing that we learned during COVID-19 was that chicken eggs have a massive immune property to them that strengthens the human immune system. That the moment you eat one of those eggs and the yolk goes into your body, it immediately changes your gut microbiome and allows it to find and detect and kill anything, including bird flu, COVID, that is not supposed to be there.
It's a superfood. The eggs have always been a superfood. We've just been conditioned. And what did they tell us, for health in the 80s and 90s? Eat egg whites. Get rid of the yolk. I mean, it's maniacal. You can't deny some of these strategies that they've employed against us as a society. The very things that, make us healthy, they're telling us not to eat. The very, actions that we should be doing in farming and whatnot, they're restricting, they're mandating. It all comes, it's a spiritual war. I say it over and over again. And the reason why I think it is a spiritual war is because everything that is right has been portrayed as wrong, and vice versa, right? And everything that occurs naturally, they have tried to synthesize and corrupt. And the devil can't create. He only can steal and corrupt. He can't create. And it's the same pattern here. It's the exact same pattern. They steal what occurs naturally because they can't make money from it, because they can't exploit it. They have to recreate it in a synthetic way, change it just a little bit, enough to corrupt it, and then they try to sell it back to us. I mean, think about dimming the sun. For God's sakes, like, talk about playing with fire, literally. Like, why would you even be so arrogant to think that you would be able to have an impact on that?
Well, it's almost like every position that the radical elites on this planet have taken is anti-life.
Yes.
I mean, that's the simplest way to explain it. It's all anti-life. We must reduce carbon dioxide. We must block out the sun. Kill the chickens. Kill the cows.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what's crazy right now is I've never had more life on my farm than I do right now. And I find that so ironic. Like, we've never had so much life here on the farm. We have frogs that are going absolutely nuts in our pond. We have cats that are pregnant. We have cows. We had an extra calf this year we weren't even expecting. We have all these different varieties of plants popping up out of nowhere. And I just can't help but think it's because I have just such a gratitude for life right now, because it feels like an anchor to me. Everything that's in nature feels like an anchor away from what's happening in the world. And so I think because of my gratitude for it, because of all of our gratitude for it, I guess we're just noticing it more, but there seems like we're making more happen just because we're more aware of it, if that makes sense. It's weird, I know, but we've never had this much life on our little farm. It's just, it's wild.
I will tell you, and I don't mean to be the conspiracy theorist, but when I look at all of these things, I look at how everything is unraveling. It's the anti-life agenda. And then you look at the various different types of radicalized movements out there, the materialistic, the artificial intelligence, the transhumanistic agendas, everything that's happening. Those are anti-life movements as well, anti-biological life movements. And it's almost like this planet is being prepped and prepared for something else.
Wow. See, that's what you always do, Josh. You always kind of scare me a little bit, but then
scare myself.
You scare me a little bit, but you make me think outside the box as well. And maybe that is it. Maybe that's what they're trying to achieve is some strange paradigm, that's being prepared for a different way of life. It's being prepared for transhumanism, maybe. I don't know, but I think a lot of people feel like something else is happening here.
Well, I know it. I feel it in every fiber of my being. Like, when I look at the world and I see all the things that are culminating, from the smallest little hints that are being given in the unfolding global conspiracy to the upper echelons of things, like the things that we're talking about, the culling of our food supply, the reduction in drinkable water, the blocking out of the sun, the limiting of carbon dioxide and other natural gases that are needed for life to thrive, that everything is becoming anti-life. But then you look at the social and cultural movements, and these are oriented away from degentrification. These are, transhumanism, integration of technology into the body to eliminate the whole idea of a soul, to make you smarter and integrate with technology. That everything that is being organized on such a high level, it's almost like it's in preparation for something. And I can't imagine that it's a human being of some level or conscience that is creating that system, because it wouldn't make any sense. Yes, it's a great controllable system, but then why?
Yeah.
But then why all the other stuff? Why the carbon dioxide? Why the water? Why all that? Well, to depopulate the planet. No. They can use other stuff to depopulate the planet. They don't need to limit your food to depopulate the planet. I mean, they could make it look like an accident, Mad Max world. Yeah, I get that. But when we start to look at all the little subtle things, I've been saying this for years, Tammy, we are being slowly eradicated, invaded, and the planet being terraformed.
Well, let me lay this one on you, because I've been thinking about this all week. Have you ever heard of the Strucker Memorandum?
The Strucker? No, I have not.
Strucker Memorandum. So I hadn't really either. I had read and interviewed Dr. Leonard Horowitz years ago. I came on decades ago. We came across his work. Jason introduced me to him, of course. And then I interviewed him a few years ago. And he's all about the origins of, like, the true origins of where HIV came from, where Ebola came from. You know, they're all bioweapons. That's what he was saying. You know, they were created in labs and then deployed in Africa. HIV was, and then it was brought over to America and was distributed to the homosexual population through Hep B vaccines. And so it's gotten me thinking about this, that maybe something greater is going on with HIV. Why does it keep coming up? Okay, we heard Luc Montaigne talk about it, right? He's one of the original scientists that discovered HIV, and you know, they've talked about it, how it was used in the vaccine in order to create, you know, the different antibodies or whatever that's supposed to be triggered when you get this thing injected into you. Which I don't believe that that's the way it happens. But why keep bringing up HIV? We saw Prince Harry, who started becoming his public campaign about HIV. So here's my theory, and it's just a theory, and I don't even have it fully worked out in my mind yet. So it's not, you know, it's not quite there yet, but my intuition keeps pulling me back to HIV. And I found the Strucker Memorandum this week. He was a whistleblower. Okay. Him and his brother discovered that HIV, first of all, is a man-made disease, not a homosexual disease, not a venereal disease. It can be carried by mosquitoes, and there will never be a vaccine for HIV, Josh, because it is much like the flu, he said. In his discovery, he said it's ever evolving and it changes. And so they will never be able to come up with a vaccine for HIV. His main concern is that this thing is evolving, and one day, I hate to even say this, articulate this out loud, but that cancer will actually be transmissible because of HIV. And that HIV was actually developed in a lab as a bioweapon, distributed in Africa, not through green monkeys, like they're telling us, right? But it was developed as a bioweapon, as a eugenics program in Africa. So that's terrifying, right? To think that. So then I think, when did they bring Fauci into play here? Now, I've interviewed many different doctors, and many of them were colleagues of Fauci's. Dr. Lee Merritt, she sat through many of Fauci's conferences. Dr. Carrie Madej, same thing. Richard Fleming. Also, these people knew David Rasnick, he's a scientist. These people knew Fauci firsthand before he was in charge of the NIH. You know what every single one of them told me about Fauci?
What's that?
He's a yes man. He never was a science man. He was a company man who said yes to everything, was more comfortable in front of the camera. He was more comfortable playing that role. Every single one of those people told me that I have interviewed that had any interaction with him. They brought him on to handle AIDS, Josh, because he was a yes man. And they knew that they needed somebody in that position that they could control to be able to handle this whole HIV thing. Now, same things happening again with COVID. right? And why is it linked to HIV? Why are they keep bringing up HIV? So I reported on this today. And this whole thing, you can find it too. It's called This is a Bioattack Alert. And it's Dr. Strecker, Dr. Robert B. Strecker. And the whole document is here. It's like 28 pages. So it's got all of the different information on it and how they uncovered this. And he gives a whole lecture on his website. It's really good. But it started making me think like, okay, so they maybe accidentally, maybe they were using HIV, wanted to use it in an isolated way in Africa, but somehow it ended up getting out and expanded. And then, they thought, well, we can't slow this thing down. So how are we going to contain it? And so they're starting to come up with other injections now to treat HIV. So Gilead has a 2-shot series now, skipping trials because it's so effective, Josh, right? So effective in trials now that this thing's being fast-tracked because it'd be unethical, right? They even messed up the trial group already because it's so good they gave it to the control group because it'd be unethical not to. This is the MO of these people, right? This is what pharmaceutical companies do. So yeah, now they're going to launch a vaccine or a treatment, a therapeutic 2-shot series for HIV. I feel like there's more here. I feel like there's more here around HIV.
So I didn't catch the whole episode. I edit James' show before I publish them. Yeah. So anybody who doesn't know, Unrestricted Warfare, episode 120, it aired last night on our channel. It's quite literally called AIDS, Cancer, National Institutes of Health Corridor. A medical anthropologist. And this guy's a whistleblower. He doesn't want to be seen. He didn't want anything out there, but he's a medical anthropologist who's done his research, and he goes in how this was all planned. Exactly what you're saying is exactly what he said last night on that show. He starts with simian virus 40, how simian virus 40 was extracted from monkeys and utilized to spread cancer. It was put into vaccines. It was put into foods.
This is my fear. And you know who else is now requesting? There's Aaron Siri from ICANN is now placing a FOIA request to try to get information about the origin of HIV. I'm telling you, there's more here. I don't know exactly what it is, and I pray to God that it's not that. But I mean, if there was a reason beyond the technology piece, and I kind of think of two streams here. They may be trying to solve a problem while trying to achieve what they want to achieve, right? So they may be trying to solve the HIV issue somewhat while trying to inject everybody with the technology that hooks everybody up to the Internet of Things.
Do you remember in the 90s when HIV started to come on the scene? Do you remember the news articles that were being published about it and where it came from?
Africa, green monkeys. That's all I remember.
Yeah. That nomadic tribesmen were having anal sex with green monkeys. This is what they were putting out there.
Yes, that's right. I didn't hear it back then, but I've heard people talking about that now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back in the 90s, they were saying, someone went and they were having sex with monkeys because that's what they do over there in Africa.
Right.
And this is what spread it because now they come over here and they have butt sex with, and so you have that aspect of things. But, going back to the HIV thing, a friend of mine who I've begged to come forward to give you an idea. She is a Harvard MD. She was the head of, I'll say it, AstraZeneca's vaccination program, international vaccination program. She was the head. She ran the whole program. She was in Africa, and they were having some severe problems. Fertility rates plunged almost 67% during the 1990s. And she went out there and she's talking with the medical doctors that are running the program there on the ground. And she's like, well, send me the information and everything like that. And she's taking a look at the vaccines. And so she says that there's two SKUs. There's one SKU for United States of America or domestic, and then there's one SKU for international. Like all the vaccines, when they get sent international, they're all the same. They don't change. The ingredients are exactly the same. And she said, what was weird about this batch that was sent to various parts of Africa is that it had different SKU. And so she pulls up the SKU, and when you pull up the SKU, you can see the ingredients list. And they said there is 2 different ingredients that they had pulled out of these vaccines years before, because what it does is it produces what am I looking for? Birth defects, stillbirths, and basically infertility. And she had found that they had pumped it into these vaccines more so than they ever did before. And she started calling them out, and she goes, Josh, I have the records. I have everything. And so in 2018, when she left in 2016 because of what was happening with COVID. And she goes, this was the same thing, except this was being done globally.
Well, and I just covered Gardasil this week because I had a listener that requested me cover Gardasil and what I thought about Gardasil. And did you know one of the side effects of Gardasil was sterilization, and that many young women, so there again, another thread that they could use injection to sterilize and control the population, which, I mean, it just blows my mind. I mean, when stuff is so evil, it's hard for a normal person, who generally walks around thinking that most people are good, to even wrap your mind around this level of evil.
Well, and that's why I always think of the extraterrestrial, crypto-terrestrial, or something like that, that there is something else on this planet that is unknown to the normal population that is systematically eradicating the human population slowly over time, as well as terraforming the planet. Because, I can understand some of this evil being done for profit and gain motivations, but to the extent that we're seeing and implicated in this mass agenda, I'm sorry, but there's something much more going on. And anybody who gets close to it, like Dr. Montagnier, he died last year. You had Kelly Mullins, who was the inventor of the PRC. He died after he spoke out against his own invention. I mean,
August 2019. Yeah.
One thing that for people to do is that go out there and go 30 years back and start looking at all the various different microbiologists, geneticists, and so forth that died of accidents, died of suicides and accidents.
I covered that too this week. 10 scientists. This is just in the 1 year of 2016. 10 scientists who just happened to be working on virus stuff.
Yeah.
One of them run down right by the Texas hospital he was working in by a van in the crosswalk. He was working on a virus that was being studied that originated on a cruise ship. And killed in a crosswalk, walking to work.
Over the last 30 years, there's been hundreds upon hundreds of them that died mysterious deaths. And not only that, I mean, you got various other types of scientists from all different domains. Have you seen 3-Body Problem yet on Netflix?
No, you mentioned it. I haven't gotten to it yet. Yeah.
So in that, the alien race uses these sophons to control our science, to make sure that we don't progress in science. And I said, well, what better way than to kill the scientists that are going to make those discoveries? Or when those scientists get close to those discoveries, just make sure that they get gone. And I think that that's what we're seeing, is that anybody who's figuring it out gets eliminated. And they only go to that extent when, that person is not on the radar. But I like to say that there is an agenda unfolding on this planet, but it is being exposed. We see it being exposed. We're talking about it because we recognize it. And I want people to understand that this isn't speculation anymore. This isn't, 20 years ago when we're talking about conspiracy theories, like saying, I know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. We're seeing all of this firsthand. It's fucking happening right now. And we can see the residue of it. And the truth is going to come out. And we're getting very, very close to that moment where we go, that's what it was. But it's being exposed. And then that's the thing to keep in mind, because we have to keep the good fight up. We have to control the domain of information. We got to keep on doing what we're doing. We got to keep on keeping our health secure and in line, getting that good shit inside of you, getting out and getting sun, getting your feet in the grass and the dirt. Like the last 2 weeks, I've been covered in dirt every day.
Good.
Like covered in dirt, like head to toe covered in dirt. Not rolling around in it, but I mean,
working it.
Yeah, well, I've had flooding here. We've had nonstop rain for weeks, and I got a garden, and like my garden is huge, and it's all soaking wet. But I had some stuff I had to get in the ground, and I'm like, mixing manure and soil and doing all this stuff, and I'm just like, whatever, get it done. But
good. And it feels great, I bet. To me, like I said, I just feel this calling to be in nature and to interact with it. And I think that's going to be our saving grace for those of us that are, understanding what's going on, and we're watching this stuff unfold. I tell you, I said this to Jason the other day, like I don't even care. Like if an alien landed in our field, I don't even think I'd flinch. I'd be like, well, yeah. I'm to the point now where I'm just like, I would not be shocked or even scared. I just feel like God's got us. Wherever he's taking us is where we need to be. And if they land here, if they show up here, okay, call me nuts. I don't really care. Like I'm not even worried. I wouldn't be surprised. It's so insane. It is insane.
Yeah, and I'm in the same boat that I'm not even worried anymore with a lot of what's happening. I was told a long time ago, survive what's coming. Just survive what's coming, because humanity will survive, and if you survive, then things will move on. And so just survive what's coming, people. I guess that's the best thing that we can say about that. What I'm doing is I'm putting Tammy's links out there for everybody, so you can find those in the chats. I got to mute myself. You can find her at redpills.tv/NIP. That's Naturally Inspired Podcast, if you didn't know what those initials were. The redpills.tv/NIP, that'll take you to her Substack. Please, I urge you to go subscribe over there, or go to naturallyinspiredpodcast.com, naturallyinspiredpodcast.com. Guys, I'm going to be heading over to the live Q&A in about 15 minutes over on the Social Red Pill. I hope to see a lot of you guys there. You can find that at socialredpill.com. Tammy's links, if you want to go follow her and join her and get a lot of her great writings on things, her health advice. She's got a lot of great products author over there. We got people ask about the collagen, so I want them to go over to naturallyinspiredpodcast.com so they can find that. But redpills.tv/NIP, that's one of the best places to go for all of that. Tammy, thank you so much for joining me. Next Thursday, we're going to do this again.
Josh, I just want to say, I just love it. Now on my radio audience, I am getting people tell me, that they started listening to your show now. And I just love our interaction between our shows. I think it's really cool then when people show up from the radio, from Red Pill, from Daily Dose. And it's just cool when I can send them to you, because I feel like we cover enough different stuff, but yet, it's the same type of audience that's attracted to what we're saying. So I just love you, brother. Thank you.
I love you too. Thank you so much. All right, guys. We will see you guys tomorrow. Conversations on the Fringe tomorrow night. Nate, the barbershop, joining me. We're going to be talking about the moon and what is really going on in the world. That is tomorrow night. Much love, respect. God bless you guys. You guys take care. Have a great night. We'll see you guys.
Good night, everyone.
Boone, that's impossible. Only try to realize the truth.
What truth?
There is no spoon.